Hello everyone, today I'll be presenting about the development of non-referential gestures and the ability to mark information structure in narrative speech, a longitudinal study by myself, Ingrid Vilà-Giménez, Patrick Louis Rohrer and Pilar Prieto. So as an introduction, existing research have shown that referential iconic gestures which visually represent the semantic content in speech, as you can see here where the girl refers to a hat, and non-referential gestures, which do not visually represent any semantic content in speech and whereas mark rhythmic properties in speech, start emerging in narrative discourse at the age of 4 to 6. Also, studies focusing on information structure marking and gestures have documented that gestures are used to mark information structure in discourse. However, these studies have only focused on adult speech and do not distinguish between different types of gestures. Other authors have claimed that non-referential gestures are focus markers, but there is little empirical evidence about this. We found that there is a research gap based on that there is scarce evidence about the pragmatic functions that non-referential gestures have in terms of information structure marking, on the fact that the existing studies focus on adult speech and do not distinguish between referential and non-referential gestures, and finally that there is no developmental evidence about the relationship between gestures and information structure marking. And therefore, since our aim is to analyze the pragmatic functions that non-referential gestures have in information structure marking, we would like to answer to two research questions, which are: how do children use referential and non-referential gestures to mark information structure in narrative discourse? And are there differences in the use of non-referential gestures to mark information structure in development? And in order to answer to these research questions, we conducted a study based on Vilà-Giménez and colleagues' corpus of Catalan children's narrative development, which contains 83 participants who were video recorded at 2 time points, and they had to participate in a narrative retelling task. In terms of data coding and analysis, we first coded for gesture type, distinguishing between referential and non-referential gestures, and then in terms of information structure, we first coded for information status, so whether the information is new or is background information, as you can see in the example, and then we also coded for reference status, so whether the gestures are produced along with a new referent, an old referent, or a referent that is accessible from the context. And so, which are our results? So we first found that there was an increase in the use of non-referential gestures in development, so that the children produced more non-referentials at the second time point than at the first one. And in terms of information structure, we found that there were no statistical differences between referentials and non-referentials and between the 2 time points, which means that the 2 types of gestures at the 2 time point in development marked focus rather than topic, which means that the gestures are used to mark new information rather than background information. In terms of reference status, we observed no differences in referential gestures, and in non-referential gestures, there were no statistical differences at the first time point, but at the second time point, which is when the children produced more non-referential gestures, there were statistical differences, so that the children produced more non-referentials, which marked new reference in discourse, as opposed to given or accessible reference. And so, what do these results mean? So we first of all can claim that it is at the age of 5 that children start acquiring the pragmatic functions of non-referential gestures, and that these functions develop as the use of non-referential gestures increases in development. And also that non-referential gestures help frame discourse structure, specifically information structure and new reference in discourse. And so, as a take-home message, we would like to claim that our research in children's narrative speech shows the pragmatic values of non-referential gestures, specifically in information structure marking. And that is everything from us. Thank you very much for watching our presentation. Please feel free to ask questions and please check our additional materials for more content. Thank you.